Okay, this is Moshe coming to you from Israel and the Galilee on the 21st of May, 2025. It's 7:24 in the morning. A lot of news to cover. The big stuff is Iran is sort of mocking America and saying, no, we don't need to negotiate with you. We're not going to let you insult us and tell us how much nuclear material we could have and all that stuff. That stuff's off the table, so there's no point in negotiating. Then CNN comes out and tells the world that America has received intel that Israel is preparing to attack Iran, which is rather stupid because Israel would most likely, I would say 90% chance, never do a surprise attack on Iran without telling America. That's a theater of the absurd. And so we're going to analyze what is really going on here because it's not looking the way CNN is portraying it. And then the nations are turning against Israel, talking about sanctions. The UK broke off trade talks with Israel. More discussions of sanctions. Netanyahu backed down on the cutting off of the aid yesterday. 93 trucks came into Gaza. That's a lot of trucks. They're usually like tractor trailer 40 footers. It's a lot of food. And today there's going to be a similar amount coming in. The UN is paying for this food. Israel is moving the Gazans out and continuing their next enhanced phase of the war, but I'm not so certain how enhanced it really is, and there's talk of it being dragged out again by Netanyahu. And that all started after Trump left his Middle East tour. And we're going to unpack all of this and explain it. And then I'm going to catch up on the Ezekiel 38, 39, Gog and Magog, and go through that with you and show you in great detail why it's not for today and what will happen. And, things like this that you probably don't understand is going to happen, okay? But right out of your Bible. And we'll get into it, and we'll discuss if Israel is going to attack Iran, what it will look like. And the B-2 bombers have all been taken out of Diego Garcia, and they're now back in America, but there's 4 B-52s that came there and 15 F-15s, which are basically fighter bombers. They can carry a lot of payload and drop a lot of ordnance, but they're not stealthy. Neither is the B-52, and we'll unpack how that can work. The bottom line on that one is the B-2 bombers may have just been brought in to attack the Houthis predominantly, and maybe attack Iran, but I think Trump is worried about an attack on Diego Garcia, where the B-2s are, and there was about 7 there, maybe 8, 9, 6, between 6 and 9. And he didn't like that idea of losing them, but he has 4 B-52s, which are, number one, they're not stealth. Number two, they carry a very big payload, so do the B-2s. So if you're going to take the radar and the ground-to-air defense systems out of Iran, which taking the radar out would do a reasonably decent job, but it's more involved, which I'll explain later, then the B-52s can drop a massive amount of ordnance, okay? And we'll get into it. Okay, so I'm going to go jump into the live stream and make sure we got a live stream and We got sound and picture, put a few fast posts up, wait for people to come in briefly. It's only fair to let the people come in.
Jump into the live stream.
We got sound and picture. Moderators are here. Thank you much to the moderators. We're going to cover this. Rubio said there's going to be a civil war in Syria in 2 weeks, and we're also going to talk about the Russian base in Syria that was attacked yesterday. Not a huge attack, but attacked. Okay. To get a couple of quick posts up, so some of you are not going to like that and you're going to leave. I'm sorry if you do. What can I do? Okay, and I'm going to get my email address up if any of you want to send in prayer requests or toss requests. You'll be able to do that by email, or you could post it in the chat, whatever you want to do. Email is more private, I suppose. Okay, we're good. What I'm good for is getting you a lot of news, especially in the Middle East. That's my specialty. Because most people don't understand the Middle East. I've lived here for many years, and I understand it, I believe, pretty good. And there are other people that do too, but it's pretty hard to find them on the news, okay? And I combine it with real Bible prophecy right out of the Bible, not the make-believe prophecies that all these crazy churches spew forth, okay? You'll see it when I reference it and read it to you. You'll understand that it's real Bible prophecy, and it's a lot of the Bible prophecies that I'm going to quote right out of your Bible are not discussed by the churches, as you'll soon see. And don't blame that on me, okay? So, being a Bible-believing site, Old and New Testament, we're going to do some praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Okay, I'm going to change my hat, which is going to take a few seconds. It's right over here. Be right there, guys. It's a new one. I gotta adjust the size thing. Should have it right. You probably can read what's on my hat. Not exactly what you're used to seeing, is it? Okay, so let's talk about what happened in Syria with the base. There's two Russian bases in Syria that I think the Syrian government was in negotiations with Russia. They wanted to give them back the bases, but they wanted Bashar Assad sent back to Syria so they can hang him publicly. I'm sure he'd have a trial that probably lasted about 2 minutes where they read him the charges and then hung him. And they wanted the money. He took hundreds of billions out of Syria the day he left to Russia. And he probably sent that money to Russia. And the Syrians probably wanted the money back to Russia. And I would guess that Bashar Assad sent the money to Russian banks somehow. And I would assume he required, or the Syrians would want not just Bashar Assad back, they'd want the money back, because they need money, and that would mean that Putin would have to pay his commission back to them, and Putin would never do that. He who dies with the most toys wins is the theme of the Satanists, okay? And but I guess the continued negotiations, they never destroyed the bases. There's two, an air base and a Navy base on the Mediterranean. Excuse me. The bases are in what's called Latakia or Latakia, Syria, and the air base is a long walk away from the Navy base. And because the Syrians were doing genocide on the Alawites, on the Druze, and on even Christians, excuse me, I've got to change this because it's dusty. I hadn't worn it in at least a year, so it's making me sneeze. So anyway, I displayed my hat, and I'll clean it off and use it more. So there have been for weeks now Alawites and Christians and Druze and others that were being persecuted by the new Syrian government for reasons of eliminating potential enemies, genocide, because they're not the right kind of Muslims, etc., etc. They've been living at the base, I guess, out in the open air. Probably there's between 1,700 and 2,500 of them is the estimates living there. There are a small amount of Russian soldiers that were left there to protect the base from looting and pillaging, although the serious equipment was withdrawn by the Russians. So they were there to, there was kitchens and dormitories and, conference rooms and various equipment and stuff like that. They just have small arms, basically. They might have artillery, I don't think so. They have basically light machine guns and heavy machine guns. And the idea is not to repel the Syrian government from attacking them, because they couldn't hold up. The Syrian government would just send thousands of soldiers with tanks. It's to stop the people from overrunning the base and looting it, because it's a poor country. So there was an attack launched from a very nearby village by militia group, not the regular Syrian army. And for about an hour, they were shooting gunfire into the base. And the Russians were returning the gunfire. So it was a firefight for about an hour. The thing that bothered them the most would be the fact that they were sheltering these people that the militias have targeted for genocide. The thought is that the Syrian government allows them to do this. In other words, the Syrian government's not about to go out there and use their military to stop them. Okay? So the Syrian government has been bellyaching to these various militias and giving them a deadline, which I think is the 2-week deadline, that they have to unite with the Syrian forces under the new leader of Syria, or else they're going to be eliminated. So Marco Rubio said that in 2 weeks, there's going to be a civil war in Syria, not a little one, a big, full-blown civil war. Why? Because these radical Muslim groups don't like Syria getting in bed with Trump and Trump lifting the sanctions, and they know that Trump's not going to let them continue as a highly radical ISIS, Al-Qaeda type government and purge the Muslims and Christians out of Syria, kill them, that they don't like, which is what ISIS and Al-Qaeda like to do. So they see that their leader is selling out to America, and, they may get rid of him, okay? I'm sure Israel is doing everything it can to help see the civil war break out, because it'll serve to weaken both contingents, okay? The Israelis have a funny saying they use, and, it's saying, like if the these militias, go into revolt to overthrow the Syrian government is fighting back, the Israelis will often say, I wish them both success in their endeavors, okay? Because they're weakening each other. Is any country going to go in there and help stop this? I don't think so. It could happen, but, if there's a lot of civilians getting killed, some country could say, oh, we can make a really good name for ourselves by going and stepping in there. But who's going to do it? China? Forget about it. Russia, they got their hands full with Ukraine and Europe, and they're not going to do it. They might send another 100 or 200 soldiers to the bases to protect, but they're not going to do anything. The militias they were probably probing the Russian bases with that 1-hour attack. And they know how the Russian bases are going to defend themselves, and they're probably going to go in with greater force. And they weren't trying to storm the walls of the fort. Well, they don't really have walls, I don't think. They were just shooting at them at a distance. It's probing, And they're probably getting ready to collect a few thousand of these lunatic psychotics and storm the base, in which event, they would do two things with the Russian soldiers. They would engage them in active gunfights, and if the Russian soldiers fought back, they would kill them. And if the Russian soldiers defended, they would, my guess is likely take them as prisoners and call Putin to come get them. I don't think they would take them as prisoners and execute them. They would try to make points with Putin. Now, one of the things they could do, knowing how the Muslims operate, is take the Russian soldiers hostage. They're probably not going to fight to the last bullet and die for Mother Russia. They'll surrender. And then they're not going to just be returned to Putin. They're going to be used as hostages to get Bashar Assad back and his money. Putin will like that as much as a good case of poison ivy. So will Putin send hundreds of billions of dollars of money back because they grabbed 100 or 200 of his soldiers? Chances of that are zero. Putin will threaten them and tell them if the soldiers aren't returned, he's going to bomb them. And he probably would send long-range bombers over there to bomb some of their installations. Would anybody intervene over that? America? Nah. Why? Israel? No, they'd give the coordinates to Russia. They'd help them. Okay? So is this necessarily going to happen? I'm not so sure that it's going to come that quick. It might happen. We got to watch. I think that the existing government realizes that if they stop these people, they're going to have a civil war. And if they don't stop these people, Trump's going to reinstate sanctions on them. And I seriously doubt that they've received the billions of dollars that were frozen in sanctions against Bashar Assad. I would say the chances of them getting that money now, and with the threat of a civil war coming with genocide and all that, I think it's going to take a little more time for that money to show up, and it may not show up because Trump's not going to throw billions of dollars into genocide again. So let's say Trump gives them $3 billion or whatever it is held for sanctions, and they get the money, and then a week later they go back on the genocide trail. Trump looks like an idiot, right? Trump's not that big of an idiot. So I think they're going to watch this one closely. Rubio's afraid because if these radicals, militia groups inside Syria attack the existing government and dismantle it, one of the first things they're going to do is attempt to commit genocide, and they're also going to contact Iran and ask for help. And they may also contact Iraq and ask for help. They probably will. And Iran could send 25,000 IRGC in or something like that. And that maybe they don't even need that many. They could move them into Syria via ground. They go from Iran by ground to Iraq, which borders Syria, and they just roll in. He might not even need that. He might be able to get away with 5,000 or 10,000 IRGC with, a couple of hundred antiquated tanks, some artillery pieces, and mobile artillery possibly, and jeeps and personnel carriers, and lots of machine guns and, shoulder-fired weapons, stuff like that. Missiles as well. And Iran's idea, this revolution is maybe likely Iranian backed, and they're desperately trying to overthrow it so they can move back in and put missiles there pointed at Israel. And we know Damascus will be a ruinous heap. And the new Syrian government, they call it HTS, Hotel Tango Sierra, is based in Damascus. Israel has bases in the area of Syria we're occupying that go right up to within 2 or 3 miles of Damascus, or maybe even closer now. It may even be a half a mile. It's very close. We have armor, artillery, soldiers, and we have the ability to give them air support in a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, very easily. If Iran starts moving in, Israel will probably bomb the Iranians. Or help the Syrian regulars do it. I don't know. The Houthis might be able to help if they could lob missiles into Israel. They could lob them into Syria. Syria has no good air defenses. The Syrian army has precious little. They have no aircraft to speak of. They got old helicopters, a few old planes, very, very few, handfuls of, nothing to speak of. They have, Israel's destroyed probably 90% of the weapons and the bases that Syria left behind when Bashar Assad pulled out. So they made sure they had nothing. So they're holding on by spit and bubble gum. I think all the other nations are going to be afraid to get into this because of the genocide. Now, maybe the militant groups are actually going to be on the side of the regular government, and the other groups that are afraid of them, which could be the Kurds, the Druze, Christians, Alawites, are arming up. Maybe America or Israel is helping them, and they're arming up, and they're going to get rid of the Syrian government. And these militias are going to fight on the side of the Syrian government. If the Alawites respond to the pressure that's going to come on them from the countries of the world when these militias start doing genocide, and they don't cut it out, they're going to go under sanctions again. But if they suppress the militants and try to stop them, then America's going to be happy about that, but they could be in a real civil war. Now, there's a lot of division there. The Druze, for instance, don't really like these militant groups at all because they want to kill the Druze. And they don't like the Syrian government either. So, you see, it's really going to be a three-way. And the Alawites are going to be in the same thing as the Druze and probably the Kurds. Although the Kurds may stay content, but I doubt it because this existing HTS government is friendly with Turkey. And Turkey put a military base in central Syria, which these radical groups are probably not happy about. That Turkish base will definitely come under serious attack. So the whole thing is crazy, you know. It's likely going to turn into lunatic land, which is good for Israel because they're going to be focused on destroying each other, not Israel. So we watch and wait and see what happens to Syria. We know in Bible prophecy, the capital is Damascus, and when it goes, the country's gone. I got to take this. Yes. Yes. Okay. Mise. Oh, Shaleach. Okay, you're Akshav Baderek HaShaked now. You're here now. All right, I come out Bechutz right now. Okay. Okay, bye. I gotta get a package out of my gate. I'll be right back. Sorry, guys, that's life in Israel. You work for the delivery guys, they don't work for you. That's the problem here. That was my supplements. Okay, so the big takeaways with Syria is this. Before Trump lifted sanctions, the leader of the new Syrian government offered an oil deal to Trump, which probably went along the lines of what Trump did with Ukraine with the minerals and metals, a 50-50 split. So he probably told them, we'll give you the oil fields, the refineries. We'll do a 50-50. You get the American companies to involve, and all that. Knowing that America would give him military protection if he did this. Now, I don't know if any such deal was reached, but it was put on the table. They also said that they would do Abrahamic Accord deal with Israel. The HCS government is just trying its hardest to stay in power. They know they're weak, and they're reaching out to anybody and everybody that would help them. And that boils down to America and Israel. Israel knows that if you help them, they'll just turn against you after they get rich and established. If they get all the oil fields working and the refineries, they're going to be pretty well off. So Iran doesn't like that, because that means the American bases in Syria are here to stay, in Syria, and they don't want this. So that's what's going on in there. Russia and Ukraine just knocking each other's lights out. No ceasefire, no nothing like that. They're saying Putin might want something, to regroup with this war, but, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. Nobody's winning in any real way. Now, we go to Israel attacking Iran. Can this happen? Yes. What could Israel do to attack the nuclear facilities? I did more research on this. They're very hardened and very fortified. Israel has no ability to carry a 30,000-pound bunker buster bomb or any of those things, okay? The MOAB or the MOP. They can't, okay? Unless we put it in cargo planes with parachutes and SDM packages to guide it, and, it's a stretch. I don't think Israel's going to do it. I don't think Israel ever did this in the past, and it could be the first time, but I doubt it. So what could Israel do? Well, first of all, the CNN story is a joke. Israel and America share intel. The White House came out with an announcement the other day that the rumor that Trump said if Netanyahu didn't end the war quickly, America would suspend economic and military aid to Israel. The White House adamantly denied that. It was fake news. Netanyahu is a very difficult idiot for anybody to get along with. So they probably have their spats, but I don't think they're that serious. Netanyahu did give in on the humanitarian aid. But humanitarian aid is being administered by American companies And I don't know who the heck is protecting them other than Israel. And it was our plan to give humanitarian aid to the Gazans that evacuated from the north as they were told, okay, to other parts of Gaza away from the north. And they did that. I think a few hundred, 300,000 evacuated. So to reward the evacuation, Israel would allow the humanitarian aid to come in. And this doesn't sound very spectacular to me. If they told the Gazans, hey, evacuate, go to another part of Gaza, and then we'll starve you to death, the next time they told them to evacuate, they wouldn't go. So that's not highly spectacular at this point. There is heavy fighting in Gaza, but I don't see or hear of it really being to the max. So there's foot dragging here. And of course, Netanyahu doesn't want to end the war unless there's another war. Otherwise, his criminal trials would progress and he'd wind up dying in jail. Possibly. So that's a very good reason for him attacking Iran, because you see, what happens if Israel attacks Iran? Anything in Iran. Okay? The electrical grid, the other 2 or 3 ports they have, their warships, their radar, anything is... Iran gets put in a corner. They lose face if they don't attack. If they do attack, what the heck are they going to attack? And where? The other day they said Washington, D.C. was a target for them. How could they hit Washington, D.C.? One way, sleeper agents, which probably would fail. Another way is use the container ships they have that these containers are actually missile launchers, and the roof of the container opens and they shoot missiles out. And they disguise these ships to not be tracked or traced back to Iran. So who the heck knows? They might have these ships in ports near DC or near other cities, and they may launch. They can launch drones off of warships far out in the ocean, like we're talking 100, 200 miles. And a swarm of drones could, easily cover that distance and hit a city in America, DC or otherwise. America has no Iron Dome. Trump is saying he wants to build the Golden Dome, which is basically an Iron Dome system, and probably put it in the borders around America. This is at least 3 years away. Prophetically, there ain't no time. You're never going to see this Golden Dome come into reality. Not going to happen, okay? It makes the people feel good, but it ain't going to do them any good. It's just talk. He would need, I don't know, 4 or 5,000 of these setups to cover all of America. He definitely needs them on the southern border by Mexico, definitely on the Pacific, definitely on the Atlantic. And with Canada, that would be a low priority. The idea would be to take missiles down as they approach the shores of the United States. So you couldn't penetrate the border with your missiles. To do that, you really need to set up 3 types of missiles. You need a very local Iron Dome type system that's going to take missiles down with a range of very few miles, okay, from where the missile is. Then you need an intermediate takedown missile. And maybe goes 25 or 50 miles, and then you need something more serious that's a long range that maybe goes 100 miles or 50 or 60 or something like that. So Israel has the Iron Dome, the David Sling, and the Arrow 2, and we cover it that way. Plus, we have the THAAD, which is even more long range, and we have Patriots as well. So you can't put them all in one missile, you know. In addition, Israel has said they're going to introduce this year their Iron Beam, which is the laser takedown system, and the prototypes have worked, and we're supposed to be churning them out, but I haven't seen or heard of any of them being used. Now, maybe they are being used and they're not talking. I don't think so, because people hear the explosions from the Iron Dome, and the Iron Beam doesn't make explosions. So maybe they have it working, maybe they don't have enough units. I don't know what the deal is. Nobody's talking, and they shouldn't. It could have been just something that Netanyahu said to give confidence to the Israelis, and it may be 3 years away. I don't know. So Israel could use maybe 2,000-pound bombs that are highly accurate and attack the ventilator shafts of these underground nuclear facilities, because you need air in there. So they got to get the air in. So if you destroy the ventilation shafts, it's not a good thing for the people inside there. Their fresh air is gone. Next is exits and entrances, of which they have multiple for each facility. So you blow the exits up, which are the entrances, and then they can't get out, and others can't get in. The exits and entrances have to be on the surface. Now, maybe they have an elevator that takes you from the nuclear facility up to 100 feet under the ground or something. And then from there, you get off the elevator and walk up a ramp or climb steps or something to get to the surface. That would make the mission fail, if they have that, which I don't know if they do or they don't. So Israel hitting the ventilator shafts and the entrances and the exits, which are also referred to as access tunnels, would severely hamper the use of these nuclear facilities and would probably take many weeks or months to restore. But it would be a far cry from blowing it up. To do that, Israel has to take out the radar. So F-35s would be deployed, probably shooting our Delilah anti-radar missile, which is on a cruise missile backbone. They could be fired from aircraft or from the ground. So when the Iranians detect movement in their airspace, they're going to put their radar on, and the Delilah missiles will pick up the beam of the radar. And then when they're launched, they lock onto the radar and they just follow it. Now, and then their missiles, their radar is gone. Without their radar, Israel can now deploy F-15s, F-16s, along with F-35s to bomb targets in Iran. Also, their over-the-horizon radar, which could help guide missiles to Israel, which is a distance of over 1,000 miles, would need to be destroyed. So what I think you'll see is Israel take out the radar from Iran, which is going to leave them extremely vulnerable to anybody that wants to attack them by air. Hoping that might bring a peace deal with Iran, although I don't think they could care, I don't know. But that would stop Iran from being able to do large missile launches at Israel. They could try pot shots, but they wouldn't have the radar guidance. And Israel would consider this most essential when we attack Iran, because we don't want to get pelted with hundreds of missiles. So anything that could be used to guide missiles to hit Israel would need to be taken down first. Then Netanyahu may actually try hitting the ventilator shafts and the tunnels entrances, but he may also decide he wants to hit the piers. You may want to hit an Iranian airport by telling them, well, your puppet, the Houthis, are bothering our airport, will bother yours. Who knows? So for threat removal against the state of Israel, the radar in Iran has to go bye-bye. And that would be the first priority. Then that leaves Iran sitting there naked, just vulnerable to anybody. Then the plan would be Witkoff re-invites Iran cordially and politely to come to nuclear talks. But I think he would probably, at the talks, be very heavy-handed with them because he knows how vulnerable they are. So they sign a treaty and then break it. Okay, that's not going to work. because Trump said he wants the nuclear facilities dismantled, exploded, with Americans witnessing it. So America with Israel is playing a game of chicken with Iran. So what will Iran do? It's very hard to say. They're probably not going to go back to negotiations with America because they know they're just going to get threatened. So what do? They'll attack. It's really a good guess what's going to happen. And you also have to take into account, Israel may be attacking Iran, but when? We don't know. It could be tomorrow, it could be 3 or 4 weeks. Don't kid yourself, Iran, while they have their radar intact, may launch a preemptive strike at Diego Garcia and American bases in the region, as well as the oil refineries of the other countries nearby Iran, and their ports and piers that they use to offload the oil going onto ships for sale. So they may say to themselves, if we wait, we're going to lose our radar. If we have the radar, we can go to work. So they may do a preemptive strike. That means the Houthis will join in, and maybe Iraq, but I'm not thinking Iraq would. Trump would probably be looking for a way to attack Iran other than, well, I tried to negotiate with them and they wouldn't negotiate, so I decided I'm going to blow them to kingdom come. Well, Congress may get very mad about that, okay? Well, you should have went and got, the declaration of war out of the Congress before you attacked them. So if Israel, their big ally, gets attacked, well, then America has a duty and a responsibility. So he doesn't really need to we got to watch this one, okay? This whole thing with Israel attacking could be bogus, just trying to scare Iran. But remember, these idiots trying to scare Iran can really do a good job, and then Iran goes into preemptive strikes, and there we have it. So I will be watching this closely. Make sure you subscribe because things might happen at odd times during the day or the night, and I'll be doing emergency live streams to inform those that are paying attention and pick up the live stream. So this thing is, at this point, as I said, a game of chicken. Who's going to blink first? But it's a dangerous game, not a little simple game. Okay, before I forget, we've got a few prayer requests. The first one is for EB, Echo Bravo, EB, Echo Bravo. This person, we prayed for a traveler's prayer the other day and avoided some 2 bad car accidents, which is attributable to the prayers according to the person that requested it, and I take no issue with that at all. And so this person is going to be returning. So the prayer request is for a good, safe traveler's prayer, no accidents, no mishaps, and strength, stamina, and energy and peace. So for EB, traveler's prayer, no accidents, mishaps, lost or stolen baggage, and strength, stamina, and endurance, and to have a good trip. Okay, for EB. Next is for DJ. Delta Jack. DJ. Delta Jack. DJ. Prayer request is to stop smoking marijuana for DJ. Delta Jack. That's a simple prayer. Okay, next is AV. Alpha Victor, AV, Alpha Victor, AV. The prayer request here is for the in vitro to work and they have a baby. So AV, Alpha Victor, prayer request for the in vitro to work and they have a baby. Next is for SZ, Sierra Zebra, SZ, Sierra Zebra. Prayer request is for healing of the liver for SZ. Okay. Let me erase these so I know they were done. All right. Whoops. Didn't erase. Let's try again. Problem. The screen here is so difficult to work with. I keep changing the settings and it doesn't seem to work. Okay. The negotiations with Gaza are dead. We sent people to Qatar, negotiation team, and the negotiation team worked with the Witkoff plan, which is Trump's plan. So Israel said, we're going to do the Witkoff plan, what are you going to do? And the Hamas said, we're not doing it. So the negotiations are dead. Netanyahu called the negotiating team back to Israel. So I don't see any signs of the war escalation in Gaza not happening. I think it's going to definitely happen. It's already on the way. It started already. So it shows you that Netanyahu is cooperating with Trump because he's taking the Witkoff plan. And humanitarian aid, as I said, is flowing into Gaza. It'll be the second day today. So In a surprising event, the United Kingdom put sanctions on various settlers, as they like to call them, living in the West Bank, Israeli citizens living in the West Bank. The UK put sanctions on some of these people. I don't have the list. I don't think it's been revealed who actually is sanctioned, but this is unprecedented, and it's none of the UK's business, and yet they're doing it. And if the people they're putting the sanctions on is not from the UK, and they don't have assets in the UK, I don't think the sanctions are going to do anything. The Parliament, or the Congress, as you could say, of Spain is considering a bill preventing the government of Spain from selling any arms and weapons to Israel. So the siege against Israel is beginning to become enhanced. Okay? It's escalating. The Iranian officials, we're learning, are moving their family members out of Iran and have been doing so for a while now. It seems South America is a targeted destination, and they're also moving their money out. These are the elite of Iran. Okay? So they're expecting trouble. The Iranian people are telling Trump that they want him to attack Iran and topple this evil regime once and for all. And the grandson or the son of the Shah is emerging again. And this is the guy that the Americans would like to put in office inside Iran if they overthrow it, to get rid of the mullahs. This guy is a secular guy, and he's not going to be interested in any Sharia law of any sort. And he'd probably be good for the people. But that's a big stretch to get to that point, you know? So, what you're really dealing with is who's going to save face first. Is Trump going to save face, or is Iran going to save face? But right now, one of them has to save face, or they just both look weak. You know, they got to do something. Iran is violated what Trump wants, and Trump is violating what Iran wants. So somebody got to give. And it's going to be a question of who's got the guts to fire the first shot. It's in reality. I got to take a fast look at the live stream to see if I have any questions to answer here. No, we got somebody from Israel here. That's unusual. What do I think will be the next major event? Oh gosh, there's so many possibilities. I don't know. What would be the next major colossal, big, huge event would be Iran. Iran. If Trump just walks away, he looks weak. The problem with that is people that don't live in the Middle East don't understand. If Trump walks away, he looks weak. Iran may push forward and attack. They may try to get Trump to release the sanction money and end the sanctions by attacking America, homeland or Middle East or elsewhere. So you got to understand that if Trump just walks away, Iran's going to get emboldened. Now, we would hope the Pentagon people know that, and they probably do. Iran will have a lot of glass to sell. Okay. The B-2 bombers that left Diego Garcia could be at the Whitman Air Base in America, and they can reach Iran with refueling tankers. They give the pilots a stimulant pill when needed, okay? They probably have them in the plane. In World War II, and in Vietnam, these were commonly used. They were called anti-fatigue pills. Today, people would refer to it as speed. It was basically benzodrine and dexedrine, okay? In Vietnam, they gave the guys on patrol stimulant pills if they needed it. The patrol went out for 3 days, and the 3 days was the maximum you could take the stimulant pills before they stopped working and your body just shut down and you would fall asleep for, 12 or more hours, And so they went on patrol for 3 days and they took them as needed so they could stay up all night and march all day. And then they came back to the base for a few days. So the guys would sleep or basically stay in bed for the first 24 hours. So they'd get back, they'd stow their gear. I'm pretty sure they would take a shower and probably get some food and then lay down and sleep and then wake up and go to the bathroom and drink water or eat and then go to sleep again. So they were probably sleeping on and off for the first 24 hours. And then they kind of normalized and probably wrote letters, listened to the radio, walked around, hung out, talked, played ball, and, they'd go out again. I think they had like 3 days out and 3 days in, and they would do the stimulus bills if they needed it. Now, some guys would take it because they liked it, and others would take it only if they needed it, So the pilots have something that will keep them going for 1 to 2 days. That would depend on the individual, but in all of them, it would work for 24 hours. So you don't necessarily need to have 2 or 3 bunk beds in the plane in the back somewhere. So that you have a pilot, a co-pilot, a navigator. Let's say you got a crew of 3. So you put 6 on the plane, and 3 are lounging around, dozing off and sleeping on these cot beds, and the other 3 are flying the plane. So they could rotate every 8 hours and go to sleep. So they could fly for 8 hours and then go, have something to eat. I'm sure they got a microwave and a refrigerator on the thing, And that's all you'd need. Or maybe if not a microwave, some sort of an oven, but I'm pretty sure they have it. And you just need a refrigerator with a bunch of frozen meals in it, which is, if you're talking a crew of 3 times 2 is 6 people, and it's not a lot of refrigerator space you need, And but I think with the B2, they don't have an extra crew. It's the same 3, or maybe they have 5 people because they might have a communications or radar guy. They might have a bombardier that's going to launch the missiles and the bombs, and it's probably a good-sized crew. So they would take these stimulant pills. Now, in the old days, going back, 50 years or so, they were using benzodrine and dexedrine. The military might have access to something that's so I don't know what drug it is or anything like that, but I've heard pilots say they have it, and pilots say they've even used it, American pilots. So the Whitman Air Base with refueling tankers, they probably have to refuel 2 or 3 times, can be a very real option, and they're definitely out of range of Iran in Whitman Base in America, or so we would assume. We assume that. And they could attack. Now, it might be very simply Israel peels off the radar and bombs something, and Iran flies off the handle, and then Trump sends the B2s in, and they start dropping the 30-pound massive penetrator bombs and start, putting a succession of them. You hit one and then another and another. So by the time they get to 3 or 4, they're probably all the way down where they need to be. I'm guessing, but that's what I think, But meanwhile, the missile cities are going to be launching, and that's going to be a difficult situation. And the hybrid Navy of Iran is going to be attacking targets, military bases in the Middle East, and oil refineries and ports and piers of the other Middle East oil-producing countries. And Yemen would most likely attack the Iranian oil facilities with success. And so this whole thing is up in the air, and we got to watch and see what happens, okay? The Houthis are going to, if there's an attack on Iran, the Houthis will start attacking American ships, warships, if they can reach them. And they will attack the Aramco oil facility, which is Saudi Arabia's biggest oil facility, which they hit 2 times in the past. They'll hit Kuwait, they'll hit Bahrain, they'll hit Qatar, they'll hit UAE, they'll hit Jordan, and oil prices will go bananas. So will gold and silver. I mean, oil will go up, up, up. So let's see if Trump tries to just shut it down. Well, they're not negotiating, and we made peace with the Houthis, and we'll just leave Iran, go on her merry way, and we'll see what happens. And it will be interpreted as weakness, and Trump will be sorry he did that. So is Trump between a rock and a hard place? Yep. We'll see what happens. Personally, I think Trump's this is just another one of his mistakes. The tariff war is not going well. He never audited the Federal Reserve. He never got rid of Obamacare, did he? His first term, and he's not getting rid of it in his second term. The economy in America is scary. And his relations with many countries are all botched up. So let's see what happens. Let's just see. And remember, it could be just a psyop on Iran, this Israel getting ready to attack, or not. Israel's not in the habit of telling countries that, we're going to attack you with specificity. They might do it, but they're not going to announce it beforehand very well. Okay, what's going on in the live stream? Well, if you want to put Trump 2028 in there, I tell you today you won't believe me, but wait a while and you wish you never heard the name of Trump. Just wait for it. Right now, I don't expect you to believe that. But wait, not very long either. Before the summer's over. Wait. Okay, we're going to do Ezekiel 38, 39, the Gog and Magog scriptures, which there was so much news the other day I put it off, but we'll get it now. And we'll take a look at, definitely Gog and Magog happens, but let's try to understand when it happens and how it happens and what's going on with it, okay? So Ezekiel 38, verse 1. And the word of Jehovah came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Well, okay. And say, okay, let's just keep going. And say, thus saith Adonai Jehovah, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Now, that is probably the demon that runs that piece of land, okay? Now, there's a lot of people that postulate theories as to what geography that land represents, and they're probably reasonably right. And I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws. I would say that's famine. And I will bring thee forth, and all thy army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Now, a buckler is a small shield like this. A shield is a big thing that would protect a lot of your body that you could hide behind if you were taking arrows. Now, this war happens after nations beat their swords into plowshares and beat their spears into pruning hooks. This is after Zechariah 12 is over, this happens. So this is down the road, okay? So the way these old armies fought, I've studied the Roman army a little bit. They were using arrows, catapults, spears, javelins, swords, daggers, and the like, right? They had fire arrows. They would take a big ball, maybe 2 or 3 feet wide ball, and put pitch on it, or tar, you might say, flammable. And they would put it in a catapult, aim the catapult as best they could. Now we're talking a big catapult, the size of a substantial, it might be like a school bus, okay? And launch it over the walls of the enemy they were attacking. And before they launched it, they'd put a torch to it and light it on fire. So they'd light it on fire and then launch it because they didn't want it burning the wooden catapult, okay? And that was a terrible thing to have get inside your walled city or your walled military base, because it would land frequently on things that were flammable, and they would have fires inside. Very dangerous. When engaging troops, the Roman soldiers had many different formations they would use. They had a phalanx, which was rows of guys pointing to an arrow, like a tip like this, right? And when they went at the enemy was normally, in the days of the Romans, not as sophisticated as the Romans. And we're going to be in this type of warfare right here in Gog and Magog down the road. They would have a straight line, and the phalanx would come through and pierce the line. And then the soldiers in the sides would spread out, and they would cause great panic and fear in the enemy because their line was broken, and then they spread out, and it was a real mess. The Romans would have loads of archers. A lot of these archers came from other enemy armies, okay? And they would give them a bunch of arrows. And these guys were using what I would say is a longbow that would be able to go a few hundred meters. And they would shoot the arrows up in the air in an arc, and then they would rain down on the enemy army. But the Romans were smart, and when they attacked, they had formations. And they had shields that were probably 3.5 feet high or thereabouts, and probably 18 inches wide. And they had a steel over the wood, okay? A metal. And it would stop an arrow. A bow and arrow is not a heavy-duty penetrator against metal and stuff, come on. So they would hide behind that. So when they marched, the soldiers in the front would have their shields next to each other. They would be shoulder to shoulder, and their shields would touch. And the shields would come down, probably below their knee, okay? And they would be standing behind the shield. So the missiles, an arrow's a missile, but the missiles weren't coming like this. They were coming up and then down. So if they kept their exposed lower leg behind the shield, it probably would never hit them. It would be a fluke. It certainly wouldn't be fatal, And they had the soldiers behind them in the second row would put their shields up over their heads and the head of the guy in front of them. So if the missiles rained down, they would hit these metal shields and not do any damage. Okay? So they were able to walk through a wall of arrows. Now, sometimes the arrow would penetrate the metal and it would get stuck in the metal, but it didn't hurt the guys. Maybe if it pierced the metal, they might get a little superficial scratch, but they had a uniform on. It wasn't, and they had body armor. Early on, they had a big chest plate, so that would protect them against getting speared or javelined or arrow or sword. And later on, they had to cover it down the arms and make it more so they increased the armor so they wouldn't take arrows in their arms, and they had armor on their legs. They were the crackerjack army for many hundreds of years. They had all different kinds of formations they came out with, but some of the things the Romans did are shockingly brutal. Okay? Unbelievable. And I'll tell you what some of them were. They came into armies, fighting against armies that used attack elephants. An attack elephant, I think, would be an Indian elephant, the big guys, right? They could be 12 feet high, heavy. Now, shooting an elephant with an arrow is probably not going to do much good because you're going to be doing it at 200 meters or something like that. So the arrow is going to lose a lot of velocity, and it's going to just bounce off the skin of the elephant, the hide, or scratch it where the elephant wouldn't even know it. It's not going to stop the elephant, okay? So they had to find a way to defeat armies with elephants. They put a basket on the elephant, a passenger basket. People would sit on the elephant that were soldiers, and they had, this many arrows in a bundle each. So you had a few archers on there, and then you had other guys throwing javelins, and then you had a guy driving the elephant, right? So this thing was a war machine. It was shooting arrows all over the place. Now, these soldiers on the elephant were not regular ground foot soldiers that were skilled in spears and swords and hand-to-hand close combat. So if you got them off the elephant, they usually got killed in the field rather easily or ran away. Okay? So what did the Romans do? They took pigs, regular oink oink Porky the pig, right? This is so brutal. I don't even know if I should tell you, but I will. What they did is they put some sort of pitch, a flammable tar thing, all over the body of the pig. Pigs are big. You're talking 200, 300-pound pig or something, right? And they didn't take the big pointed teeth out of the pig or anything like that. They wanted this pig crazy, and they were raised for this reason. So they put the pitch all over the pig, and then they lit it on fire. Okay, so they were burning the pig brutally, and they would prod the pig to run, because the pig would go right into panic. It's on fire. He doesn't understand this. It's not natural. He's going to try to run away from the fire, but he doesn't quite understand the fire is on him. An animal wouldn't comprehend that. They understand how to run away from a fire if it's 10 feet away from them and they see a burning tree, and they run away from it. So they probably thought the source of the fire was where the guy was, where he lit it with a torch, and they'd run away from them and the fire chased them. And they would start squeaking and squealing in pain, but at the same time running at the enemy. And the elephants couldn't handle this. the elephants didn't understand that it was a pig that had fire put on it and it was running at them. They didn't know what the heck it was. It's a flammable animal squeaking and charging them. So, what the elephants frequently did is they turn around to get the heck out of there, right? What is this thing coming at me? I don't know what, I never saw anything like this in my life, right? So they trained the elephant for war, and he understood soldiers, horses, chariots, arrows that aren't on fire. So the elephant said, I'm getting the heck out of here. And it would run through the lines of the soldiers that owned the elephants and trample them and wreck their lines. And then the Romans would come in and demolish them. And that's really rather brutal. Another thing the Romans did is they raised dogs that were the predecessor of what's called the Neapolitan Mastiff. I used to breed Neapolitan Mastiffs decades ago. The males run about 125 pounds, and they're solid muscle. Solid, okay? I mean, these dogs are so strong, and they're huge. Their head's the size of a basketball. Their skull bone is, I would say, at least an inch thick, at least, if not more, and hard as a tree, okay? Hard. They've got very good hearing, they got very good smell, and they can see pretty good, like any other dog, right? There are short hair and they're gray. At night, you see nothing. Okay? And these guys are not necessarily going to bother barking because they don't care about scaring the other dog. They just want to kill it or the other animal. And why warn it? Let's just try to get as close as we can to it without barking and then kill it. The other animal may not know their intention, that kind of thing. Are they very fast runners? No, but they can cover short distances incredibly fast. A veterinarian once explained to me, he said, if you had him muzzled and somebody came into the yard and he ran across the yard and just slammed into the person, that person's going to go to the hospital. Be like getting tackled by an NFL linebacker or something like that. You're not just going to get up off the ground. You're going to be busted up. The female was 100 pounds. Now, they have other versions of these dogs where they get them to 140, 150 pounds, but that's just people messing with the dog and making them what they shouldn't be, okay? Now, these dogs got teeth the size of their incisor teeth are approaching that of a mountain lion in size. The pounds per square inch that they bite with could be higher than a mountain lion. Now, there's people that tell you, well, they can't beat up a pit bull. Okay, what is a pit bull? A pit bull is a 40-pound dog, less if it's a female. Okay, that's a real pit bull. Is it a tough dog? Yes. Can it be used to hunt wild boar and mountain lions? Yes, but not one-on-one, in a pack. So you get a half a dozen of them, and they'll attack anything. They'll attack a grizzly bear. You're going to lose a few dogs, but the grizzly bear is going to be very busted up. What they do is they hang on. They got tremendous jaw pressure, and they bite and they hang on, and they got a big, thick neck, and they start with a lot of muscle, and they start shaking. And they create a lot of damage, and they can put a person into shock. Now, when you're talking a 125-pound Neapolitan Mastiff going up against a 40-pound pit bull, what's going to happen? Well, the Neapolitan Mastiff or the Italian Mastiff is going to get a grip on the pit bull one way or the other and start shaking the daylights out of the pit bull and crushing his bones and stuff like that. Now, if the Neapolitan can't kill the pit bull in 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, depending on the dog, how athletic the dog is, then the pit bull may reverse and even kill or hurt the Neapolitan. But the pit bull isn't going to be in any real shape after being shaped and ripped up for 15 or 30 minutes to do much damage. These dogs that the Romans had were rumored to be bred to 200 pounds. It was basically an Italian Mastiff that weighed 200 pounds. And it wasn't a fat, wrinkled with lots of layers. It was an athletic one. I don't know how they did it. And they put armor on these dogs. They didn't light them on fire. They put armor on them, okay? Metal armor on their head, on their spine and the back and the neck and the chest plate. So it was on the side of the dog too, to a limited extent. So these soldiers couldn't really stab them or spear them very easily. The dog they were trained to be savages, and they released dozens of these things, and they ran at soldiers. Hitting them with an arrow would be possible, but highly unlikely, because the armor would bounce the arrow off. And killing them with your sword would be pretty difficult, because you can't get through much of that armor. And once the Neapolitan Mastiff got a grip on the leg, the soldier went down, or a grip on the arm, he'd go into shock. But what they also did on this armor, they put spikes, sharp, pointy spikes that were up and out to the sides and on the head. Lots of spikes that were razor sharp. So when the dogs ran into the army, the spikes would slice up the soldiers, and they would be jumping at the soldiers, not only biting them, but piercing them with multiple spikes. This created panic. Today, we're not going to use these tricks. What's going to happen is Elijah and Enoch are going to burn them up. That's all. That'll create panic, but not really, because by the time they realize they're burned up, they're dead. But when you go back to Ezekiel 38:39, they're fighting with Roman-era weapons. For real. It ain't today. It's after Zechariah 12. That was my point. Okay. Now I guess we'll pick it up in verse 4. And I will turn thee back, put hooks into thy jaws, hunger, famine. I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shield, all of them handling swords. So a trained swordsman with a little buckler on one arm, it's about 12 inches really, and it would probably be wood coated with thin metal to stop a sword. Wood, the swords would chop up the thing. Just putting a reasonable layer of metal over it would give it a tremendous degree of resistance against swords piercing the wood, And they'd parry with this. They would be over here or maybe on their arm, and they would parry and then thrust with the sword. Tactics like that. Okay? The shield, you can't fight swordmen against swordmen holding a 3.5 or 4 foot. Some of them could have even been 5 foot shield. First of all, it's heavy as all get up, and second of all, you can't maneuver. And they would push at the enemy line with that. Now, they came across an enemy one year that had swords. I forget what you call it. It begins with an F. The sword came out and then had a hook that curved around it. Okay? So what the swordsmen were doing to the Romans is the Romans were coming hiding behind their big shields. So one arm was holding the big shield, making them rather impervious, and the other arm had a spear, and they had a sword on their belt, and a sword plus a dagger usually. about a 11, 10, 11-inch bed dagger. If everything got bad, really bad, they lost their shield, they lost their sword, they'd go with the dagger and try to jump on the enemy, get them close, and start stabbing them or something like that. Okay, so the Roman soldiers come in with this big shield coated in metal or all metal, and he has a spear sticking out from the side of it that he's going to ram through you. And how the heck do you fight against this? And they were strong and they were very tough. And you know what they ate a lot? Lentil beans. The Roman army was running on lentil beans and cheese and bread. Lentil beans. Interesting thought. I don't know, maybe we should get into lentil beans. But so they came out with this sword that had a hook on it. So when the Roman soldiers came at them, they would swing the sword from an outside arc, and much of the blade would hit the shield, but the hook part would go in and create wounds in the soldier. Generally, armor was on the front, so they could get it on the side where they would sometimes have a space in the armor, sometimes not. Or they could go around and get him in the leg, on the thigh, or the buttocks, or the back, or the arm, or the shoulder, or the neck, or whatever. And then the Romans had to adapt to that, and they did. Okay. But it cost them. Now we're in verse 5. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shields and helmets. Persia is not Iran. Persia is the Persian Empire. It's not exactly in place today. And the destruction of Iran, referred to in the Bible as Elam, the word Iran is not in your Bible. Okay? Elam is a part of Iran today and part of, I believe, according to some historians, it includes Iraq and parts of Syria, parts of Iraq or Iraq and Syria. Okay. And it will be destroyed, devastated totally, to where the people have to leave and they get scattered into all the other nations, and the sword follows them. And then, why don't I read this to you? Because you need to understand Jeremiah 49. It's towards the end. Here it is. Now, this is going to happen today, nowadays, now, in the days or the weeks ahead or something. Jeremiah 49, verse 35. Thus saith Jehovah of armies or hosts, behold, I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. What is an arrow also called? A missile. What is the bow? It is the missile launcher, right? You put the arrow or the missile in, you put it on the drawstring, you pull it back, and your launcher, your bow, powers the missile, the arrow. So it's a missile launcher. What is the strength of Iran today? They're missile cities. They're missiles. That's everything they got. Okay? I will break the bow of Elam. That means they're not going to be able to launch missiles. That's interesting. The chief of their might. That's their mainstay. You could have 11 million missiles, but if you don't have enough missile launchers, what good do your missiles do? It's all in the missile launchers. You got it? Okay. Think about it. It's easy. Verse 36, Jeremiah 49. And upon Elam will I bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven, and I will scatter them towards all those winds, and there shall be no nation whither the outcasts of Elam shall not come. This does not appear to be tornadoes. the winds are blowing them around the world. It's sort of allegorical, okay? And there shall be no nation whither the outcasts of Elam shall not come. They go to every single nation. For I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies. Dismayed, poor choice of a word. How about shattered, broken, despair as well? Um, scared, so shamed, and before them that seek their life. And that could be Israel. And I will bring evil on them, even my fierce anger, saith Jehovah, and I will send the sword after them till I have consumed them. Doom and gloom on Iran. And I will set my throne in Elam. Now, he's not going to rule, Jehovah's not going to rule from Elam. The judgment happens in front of the throne. So he's going to judge them. And will destroy from thence the king and the princes, saith Jehovah. But it shall come to pass in the latter days that I will bring again the captivity of Elam, saith Jehovah. That's the bringing them back for Gog and Magog. Okay, they haven't gotten scattered yet. All right? It's all right. Okay, Ezekiel 38. I think we're up to 6 or 7. Well, we'll do many people are coming. Well, it says verse 6, Ezekiel 38. And all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Many people with thee, we don't know who they are. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. After many days thou shalt be visited in the latter years. That's after they get their captivity back. Thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword. You see, after Zechariah 12, the swords are beat into plowshares and the spears into pruning hooks. Israel brought back from the sword. That has not happened since 1948, has it? No, it's not set for today. It's after redemption with the great falling away, and is gathered out of many people against the mountain of Israel, mountains plural of Israel, which have been always waste, but it is brought forth out of the heathen nations. No, wait a second. What does it say? Brought out from nations, from nations of people. Okay. And they shall dwell safely, all of them. So is Israel dwelling safely now without bars and walls? Of course not. Thou shalt ascend like a storm, thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands, and many people with thee. Thus saith Adonai Jehovah, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought, And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, and having neither bars nor gates. This is not the Israel today. If you're sitting under somebody that's teaching you Gog and Magog is coming today or next month or something, you're following a blind person. And if the blind follow the blind, you're both going to fall in the pit. Not the ditch. It says pit. The English says ditch. It's pit. As in, you go to the pit, you wait for the judgment, then you go to the lake of fire. That pit. Okay? Now, some jackass will tell you, well, we didn't see the man of sin yet come and speak peace, but that'll happen. That's just a jackass lying to you. Come on, wake up. To take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon, they're not inhabited yet, it's down the road, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, heathen nations, which have gotten cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land. Yeah, we're rich, right? Come on, it's a joke. Sheba and Dedan, that's Sheba, I think, could be Edom, Yemen, and Dedan is Saudi Arabia. And the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof, shall say unto thee, art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away? Doesn't sound like the Israel today. The people are poor here. Take away cattle, goods, and to take a great spoil. That's not the Israel today. Therefore, son of man, prophesy and say to God, thus saith Adonai Jehovah, in that day when my people of Israel, does God call his people my people now? Where I told them they were not my people, I will tell them they are my people. Has that happened yet? You think it has? Not really. Dwelleth safely. It says, with my people Israel dwelleth safely. We're dwelling safely now, you think? Are you that ignorant? Shalt thou not know it? Don't let these idiots mess your head up and confuse you and throw you into panic when everything starts going bad, so to speak. It's really good, but it's bad for the world. Because you're listening to morons, okay, that are your enemy, and they're teaching you trash. And they know they're doing it on purpose. They come as an angel of light, but their light is darkness. And thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company and a mighty army. Where's the F-16s? Where's the aircraft carriers? Not there. And thou shalt come up against my people Israel, as a cloud to cover the land. It shall be in the latter days, and I will bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me, when I shall be sanctified in thee, O Gog, before their eyes. Thus saith Adonai Jehovah, art thou he of whom I have spoken in old time, by my servants the prophets of Israel, which prophesied in those days many years that I would bring thee against them? And it shall come to pass at the same time, when Gog shall come against the land of Israel, saith Adonai Jehovah, that my fury shall come up in my face. For in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath, have I spoken, surely in that day there shall be a great shaking in the land of Israel. Now let's check the word shaking. 7494 seems reasonably translated. Vibration, noise, shaking. It's okay. Now I'm in verse 20. So that fishes of the sea and the fowls of the heaven and the beasts of the field and all the creeping things that creep upon the earth and all the men that are upon the face of the earth shall shake at my presence, and the mountains shall be thrown down, and the steep places shall fall. And every wall shall fall to the ground. Sounds like a great earthquake in the book of Revelation, doesn't it? Just before Yeshua returns. And I will call for a sword against him throughout all the mountains. All my mountains, saith Jehovah, Adonai Jehovah. Every man's sword shall be against his brother. And I will plead against him. I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood, and I will rain upon him and upon his bands and upon the many people that are with him, an overflowing rain and great hailstones, fire and brimstone. See, this is very, very, very different than Zechariah 12. Very different. They're not one and the same. Thus will I magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many heathen nations, and they shall know that I am Jehovah. See, he's showing himself to the heathen. Now let's go to the next chapter. (39:1) of Ezekiel. Therefore, thou son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, Thus saith Adonai Jehovah, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and leave but the sixth part of thee, and will cause thee to come up from the north parts, and will bring thee upon the mountains of Israel. So the sixth part, that means 5/6 of the nations that attack Israel then are kaput. 1/6 survive. Different than what we see coming on them today. In, for instance, Jeremiah 46 verse 28 and Jeremiah 30 verse 11, where he says he will destroy all the nations that he scattered the Israelites into, of course, of how they treated the Israelites, obviously. And that's a lot of nations. But the people don't get destroyed. The country does, because it was built up on Satan. But here you're talking about the people getting killed. That's not necessarily the case in these days of Jacob's trouble, which is Zechariah 12. Great is Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Verse 3, Ezekiel 39. And I will smite thy bow out of thy left hand. Now, that's the missile launchers. And will cause thine arrow to fall out of thy right hand. Thou shalt fall upon the mountains of Israel, thou and all thy bands and the people that is with thee. I will give thee unto the ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured, the enemies. Thou shalt fall upon the open field, for I have spoken it, saith Adonai Jehovah. And I will send a fire on Magog, and among them that dwell carelessly in the isles, and they shall know that I am Jehovah. They may not live very much longer after they know that, but they know that. So will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel. See, the rabbis teach them they can't pronounce the name Jehovah. It's sinful. They're blotting God's name out. So instead of saying that, they say Hashem. Ha means the, Shem means name. So they'll say things like Baruch Hashem, blessed be the name. That's silly. Who is the name anyway? Is it Satan maybe? Tammuz the sun god or what? You know, it's stupid. I will make my holy name, and nowhere in the world in the Bible does it say you can't pronounce his name. I mean, it's ridiculous. So will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore, and the heathen shall know that I am Jehovah, the Holy One in Israel, Behold, it is come, that's the glory of God of Israel, who Father God Jehovah put his name Jehovah in. It's Michael, the glory of God of Israel. That is found in Exodus chapter 23, verse 20 and 21. And they that dwell in the cities of Israel, no, it's back up to verse 8. Behold, it is come and it is done, saith Jehovah Elohim. That is, saith Adonai Jehovah. This is the day whereof I have spoken. What day is that? The great day of the Lord. And they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth and shall set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and the bucklers, the bows and the arrows and the hand staves. That's a staff. And the spears, and they shall burn them with fire. So, you know, some jackass pastor or false teacher is going to tell you they burn the weapon. Well, how do you burn an F-16, an F-15, an F-22, an F-35, or a MiG-29, or a JC-10 Chinese plane, or a Rafael fighter jet, or a Eurofighter? How do you burn it? You can't even burn the seat. Don't you know the seats are fireproof in those things? What are you going to burn? The tire? Nah, it ain't going to burn. You're going to burn an artillery piece? How? With what? What are you going to burn? A tank? You can't. Okay. This burning is for Roman era weapons, because the swords were beat into plowshares and then they beat them back, and the spears into pruning hooks and they beat them back. You'll see. So that they shall take no wood out of the field, neither cut down any out of the forest, for they shall burn the weapons with fire, and they shall spoil those that spoil them, and rob those that rob them, saith Adonai Jehovah. So what do you think you're going to see? Israelites taking the turret of the tank and dragging it back to the house and putting it on fire in the fireplace? Are you that dumb? They're lying to you. Okay? Let's go. Verse 11. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will give unto Gog a place there of graves in Israel, the valley of the passengers of the east of the sea, and it shall stop, and the noses of the passengers, and there shall they bury Gog and his multitude, and they shall call the valley of Hamon Gog. Something like multitude of Gog or something like that. And 7 months shall the house of Israel be burying of them. We would say bury them, that they may cleanse the land. See, you got to cleanse the land. They're under the law. I know the same law the church says is done away with. They're under the law. And in Zechariah 12, the 2 witnesses burned them up, so there's nothing left but ashes. But ashes don't require you to cleanse the land. It's just like soot, ashes. That's all that's left. They shall be ashes under your feet. Here it's different. You got to cleanse the land. So you'll see what they do. They hire buriers and stuff. We'll get into it. Yea, all the people of the land shall bury them, and it shall be to them a renown the day that I shall be glorified, saith Adonai Jehovah. The great day of the Lord. He's glorified. And they shall sever out men of continual employment, passing through the land, the Hieris, land of Israel, to bury with the passengers those that remain upon the face of the earth, to cleanse it after the end of 7 months shall they search. And the passengers that pass through the land, when any seeth a man's bone, then shall he set up a sign by it, by the bone, till the buriers have buried it in the valley of Hamon Gog. So what's going on? Bones show up, okay, from all the fighting and the destruction, right? So the bones are basically defiling or contaminating the land because they're human bones. So the Israelites don't pick the bone up and bury it, because then they would be, according to the law, unclean, because they were touching a dead body. A bone's part of a dead body, right? Okay. So instead of touching it, they would maybe take a piece of wood and drive it into the ground and put a crosspiece on it with an arrow or something pointing to where the bone is. So the buriers wander around the common areas where the soldiers got killed and the people got killed, the bad ones, and would see the arrow pointing, right? Find the bone and bury it. And then they would have to come back and go through some sort of cleansing or something, I suppose. Okay. And thou, son of man, thus saith Adonai Jehovah, speak unto every feathered fowl and every beast of the field. Assemble yourselves and come, gather yourselves on every side to my sacrifice, that I do sacrifice for you, even a great sacrifice upon the mountains of Israel, that you may eat flesh and drink blood. So this is a blood sacrifice for the animals. So I guess he's making a covenant with them. And that covenant could be because Yeshua is coming to earth very quickly after this, right? As far as I understand. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, he's making a covenant with them. Okay? And that's probably when we don't cause any harm to them anymore. And anyway, let's go. And you shall eat fat till you are full, and drink blood till you be drunken of my sacrifice, which I have sacrificed for you. So he's probably doing a blood covenant with them, giving some blessings so they don't have to suffer anymore. With the animals killing each other, they'll go vegetarian after this. The lion will eat straw or wheat, And the animals can drink blood. People can't. The animals can. He doesn't care about that. Thus you shall be filled at my table with horses and chariots and mighty men, and with all men of war, saith Adonai Jehovah. It's a curse, really, to die and have your body devoured by wild animals, by the way. And it's in the law. And I will set my glory among the heathen, and all the heathen shall see my judgment that I have executed, and my hand that I have laid upon them. So the house of Israel shall know that I am Jehovah Elohim from that day and forward. Verse 23. And the heathen, the Goyim, shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their lawlessness, because they trespassed against me. Therefore hid I my face from them, and gave them into the hand of their enemies. So fell they all by the sword. And that would be read with Hosea 6:1 and 2, I think. According to their uncleanness and according to their transgressions have I done unto them, and hid my face from them. Therefore thus saith Adonai Jehovah, now will I bring again the captivity of Yaakov, and have mercy upon the whole house of Israel, and will be jealous for my holy name. This is the things that are going to happen before Gog and Magog, more like Zechariah 12 era. It is. After they have borne their shame and all their trespasses, whereby they have trespassed against me, when they dwelt safely in their land, and none made them afraid. Well, that's now projecting into the second 70 of Daniel 9:24. When I have brought them again from the people and gathered them out of their enemies' land, and am sanctified in them in the sight of many nations or many heathens, then shall they know that I am Jehovah. that I am Jehovah Elohim, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen, but I have gathered them unto their own land, and have left none of them any more there. Neither will I hide my face any more from them, for I have poured out my spirit upon the house of Israel, saith Adonai Yehovah. So that's the version of Gog and Magog they don't teach you. It's not a version, it's Gog and Magog, but I'm explaining it to you because they teach it with garbage. Okay, I'm going to jump in the live stream and see if I have any questions or anything I need to respond to. Is it unreasonable for life to protect itself against those who harm it? No, you can protect yourself from people trying to harm you. A scimitar. A scimitar is the Egyptian sword, which the Israelis used a lot. You have a handle of probably 8 or 9 inches. Then you have about 4 or 6 inches of straight sword. Then you have a curve like this, almost like a sickle, and it has a point. But that wasn't quite good enough to get the Roman soldier wounded from behind, that was behind the shield, because that sword didn't have any length. And those swords were also made out of brass. They were soft metal. They weren't such sharp, great swords. It's a different thing. The Egyptians had it, and because we were in Egypt for so long, they made them in Israel. But it wasn't a great sword. The best swords today are used by Europeans. Some are double-edged, some are single-edged. Single-edged are going to cut better, slice better than double-edged. Double-edged will pierce better than a single-edge. I always preferred the Japanese swords, the katana, and that's what I trained on when I was younger. I like those. They're good, and a lot of swords are good. A double-edged sword is good too, but different reasons for different swords. I used to take some swords and take the edge off them, and I used to practice with the speed bag, the boxing bag, and I sit there with the sword and I go like that and get my rhythm. And then I also did it with a top and bottom bag. It was a double top and bottom bag, and I would practice moving because the bag springs around a lot and you get pretty good. It springs around faster than people do, and you get pretty good at the sword like that. And it's easy to take the edge off the sword. And if you don't want to damage your bags, you just put duct tape on the dulled blade. Duct tape on a sharpened blade is going to cut through. But once you dull the blade, you put 2 layers of duct tape on it so it doesn't hurt your bags. by hitting it with bare metal, you know. I also like 20-inch swords. There's some very heavy ones you can get from Asia that I have and I've used. They're very good. And you also can use a small Japanese katana called the wakizashi. It's, I don't know what they get. They sometimes 18 to 20-inch blade. You can't use a 29, 30-inch blade sword indoors or in close quarters very easily. So the wakizashi could be used indoors a lot better. Bowie knives are rather potent. You need at least like a 10-inch blade, 11, 12-inch blade. That's about, they say from 9 to 12 inches, but I prefer 10 or 11 around there. And you don't fight with one Bowie knife, you fight with two, okay? And if I fight with swords, I'll try to fight with two. Or fight with a sword and a Bowie knife or something like that, you know. Two Bowie knives is very difficult for somebody to deal with because let's say you got an 11-inch blade and you got a 5-inch handle, you're running around with a 16-inch instrument and it's rather thick at the top and the tip would have, you know, like 4 inches in the tip. The upper edge would be sharp enough to cut rather well and the bottom. And you would use two, so you would parry with one and then you could also, well, your swordsman is unlikely going to have two swords. He's most likely going to have one. So you could parry and then thrust or slash and disarm him. Or you could come at him if you're going to initiate the attack, which I don't recommend. You're going to come at him with two piercing, cutting instruments at the same time. So he's going to be able to block one, and then the other one's going to cause damage. It's easier to let the guy come at you, but if you are going to come at the guy, you don't want to just run in and try to cut his head off or thrust him through the belly. Or, you know, what you want to do is you want to take things away from him. You want to attack his arms, his hands, his legs, maybe his eyes, maybe his carotid. You want to attack these things while you're at a safe distance. So you just come in to hit those things, and then you wear him down rather efficiently. And then when the time comes, you could just watch him collapse from loss of blood and shock, or you could go in and dispatch him with a fatal blow. So that's the more intelligent way. Now, if you're in a Roman army scenario and it's just a big balagan, a mess, a freak show, everybody's fighting and it's all chaotic and stuff like that, well, then you're going to have to, you know, thrust. But it's always better to, you know, I mean, you could just come in and hit the arm and then come back and hit it again and then come in on the side where the arm can't move anymore and go for the ribs or something. Yeah, it's interesting thing, and it just depends what you're trying to do. The Romans wanted distance on the battlefield. They threw javelins. A javelin is a very light spear with a long metal tip, maybe 8, 10, 12 inches. And they could throw them for, I would probably guess some of them could go 200 meters with it, maybe further. And these things, they would throw them in an arc. They'd go up in the air and come down with velocity. And they would be pretty deadly. You know, if you got hit with one, you certainly didn't want that. And then they carried spears, which would be, you know, even 6, 8, 9 feet, 10 feet, depending. And they would try to, you know, gut the enemy with the spear while the enemy was too far away from them. And they had double-edged swords that had about, I don't know, 19, 20-inch length, counting polish, you know, an edge. And So there are all different kinds of weapons, a really skilled person can use two 4-inch blade folding knives against the sword, but you've got to be very proficient with your knives. And the swordsman has to not be that proficient. And the idea is you're basically going to parry with one of your knives and step in rapidly in the guy, because the sword doesn't do him that much good when you're 6 inches away from him. And then you got to take him out pretty quick. The best knives to use for that are karambits, which are really not thrusters, they're slicers, and they have a curve, so you can hook the sword and manipulate it around and then go for the throat or the eyes or something like that. So that can be done too, but you just got to be profound. Now, you could also come at a person with a 6-foot staff, a big piece of wood. It's not that easy to take a sword and cut through a 1-inch thick piece of wood that's hard wood. If the person holding it sees the sword coming and moves with the sword, or maybe bends, so just deflect the sword. And so if you just hold the sword as rigid as you can, the guy might be able to break your staff or cut through it. Maybe, Swords aren't made to whack through an inch of hard wood. You could cause problems for the sword. You don't hit swords against rocks and stuff like that either, So, but if the guy was trying to hit the sword and you kept the staff and you kept moving it and the sword glanced off it, it wouldn't do much good. And then you just take one of the ends of the sword and whack him in the head or the knee or the elbow or something like that and cause a lot of damage. So those weapons are distance weapons, and they can be rather, when somebody knows how to use them. I never really spent a lot of time on them. I spent time on them, but not that much. They can be dangerous, but the sword is, I think 2 20-inch swords, one in each hand, is the way to go. Because you got plenty of reach, you've got plenty of power, and you got to be able to thrust and chop with it and slash, and that's the way to go. But whenever you're doing edged weapons, in my opinion, you're better off holding 2 weapons. Now, if you're in a battlefield like with Rome or against Rome, you're going to want to have a shield because there's people throwing stuff at you. The Romans also had slingstone guys that would hide behind, they would have on the front line guys with big shields wearing helmets and armor with spears pushing at the enemy, and they also carried swords and daggers. And then behind them, there would be other soldiers that were more proficient, perhaps, than them. And then even in the third row, they had more soldiers that were, let's say 10, 15, 20-year veterans that had been through a lot of combat and been very well trained, and they were better yet. So if the enemy could handle the first line and they hit the second line, then if they got through the second line, they hit the best. So they were saving the third line, and they didn't want them getting wounded and killed unless the situation was desperate and the enemy broke back to the third line. So they would have a real surprise on their hand, But this fighting, the way the Romans fought, is a whole different world. They had warships. Okay, they were maybe 60, 100 feet long. They were made out of wood, and they had sails, and they rowed them. They had rowers. Soldiers or slaves or whatever they had would be rowing the boat. And the Romans were very clever. They had a big metal ramp, plank, whatever you call it, propped up in the air, tied to the mast for the sail. and it would be up like this, and then it would fall down, and at the bottom it had, like pretty serious spikes, and big nail type spikes. So when they were going after a ship, see, the enemy typically put people on the ship that knew how to operate ships. And their main forte was, they could launch arrows off the ship, throw spears, maybe, things of this nature. All right. This was pre gunpowder. So, what the Romans did is they put trained infantrymen, swordsmen, spearmen, guys who understood shields and bucklers and fighting close, you know, smashing the enemy in the head with the buckler or the shield and stabbing him with a sword or a dagger. They were close up infantry ground fighters. The other countries' navies were not trained like this, maybe by accident. Some of them were in the army and knew how to use swords, but it was pretty unusual. They weren't very good with swords. So what happened is the Romans would go charge at the enemy vessel that was trying to shoot projectiles at him, and when they got close enough, they would drop this metal plank down on the enemy ship, and the plank had, like big nails or spears in there, and they would hook itself, embed itself into the wooden deck of the other boat, or the wooden whatever it hit, and the enemy couldn't get away, and it was a walkway. Then they had these highly trained swordsmen with armor run from the Roman ship over this walkway they created and engage the enemy sailors with swords who were not good swordsmen, and they just crumbled. They couldn't hold up. So you see, the old warfare is going to come back, and it's really interesting, But we're going to win because we're going to, not by might, not by power, but by His Spirit. We're going to be the dominant force, but we will use these weapons. And it says we'll fight with sling stones, like David did. What's good about a sling stone is it's very concealable. You have some leather thong straps with a patch of leather, and you put a stone in there. Now, you can take stones you find, and you could have people break the stones and then grind on the stones to make them smooth. That's what you want, a kind of a flattish, smooth stone. Or you could have a round one, too. And then you swing it, which gets it going. You could get it going like 100 miles an hour. And you hit somebody with it, like David hit Goliath in the head. It went embedded in his skull and killed the guy immediately. Now, then there's another way to do it the Romans brought to the world. They take a stick like a broomstick, and they put a piece of leather strip on there, and they have like a pocket like this, and they put the stone in there, and then they just take the stick and they go, and they fling it, and you can get up to 100 miles an hour like that. So they would have sling stone people behind the 3 layers of their line. They have people launching arrows, and they also had slingers. And they would be slinging stones at the enemy while the enemy was trying to engage the Roman soldiers with their shields and spears and swords, and they had the handful. And then they had these slingers hitting them with rocks, that could break bones and knock them out and everything. The Romans were pretty good at this stuff. They spent a lot of time learning how to do it. And the Roman soldiers were very sturdy. I mean, it took a lot to be a Roman soldier. There was a lot of training. They were engineers. They knew how to, build stuff like siege works. They were quite the army for hundreds of years, quite the army. Yeah. That's what it's going to be like in the future. You're not going to have the jets and all of that stuff. Of course, they're going to beat swords into plowshares and the spears into pruning hooks. So, what's a pruning hook? A pruning hook is a pole which usually has a curved edged weapon on it, like tip of a spear, but with a curve, so they can stick it up in the air and pull it and strip the fruit off trees high up where they can't reach. Or they can prune a tree, they can, trim the branches so it grows better, stuff like that. And a plowshare is basically something like an ox or a horse or a donkey or a mule or something's going to pull, and it's kind of round edges and it chops up the ground when the animal, the strong animal pulls it, it rips up the ground, breaks the ground. So you could go back and put seeds in there and, push them down in the dirt and water them and stuff and grow stuff. So that's what they make. And that's because of what Jehovah does to the enemies of Israel in Zechariah 12. But after a while, I would guess like about 63 years, there's a big falling away and people have forgotten and they got to learn a lesson again. And that's the Israelites getting tested during the second 70 of Daniel 9:24. Daniel 9:24 in every single Hebrew manuscript going back to 900 AD, the oldest ones, it says Shavim, 70, 70. Only the English translations say 70 weeks. It's the same exact word used twice. How could it mean 70 in the first place and then weeks in the second? It can't. It's absurd. It's two 70s. The first 70 you could say is Babylonian captivity. It also could be the time from when Yeshua was born, which would have been 0 AD. So it would have been that 0 year wouldn't be BC or AD. It would be the year he was born. And 70 AD was when the temple was destroyed and Jerusalem was destroyed. So that was the 70 where they were tested. They had their Messiah, and a lot of them failed, and they got killed. And the ones that were with Yeshua were told to not be in Jerusalem when you see the armies coming to get out of town, and they did. So the whole 70 weeks things was the church world trying to lie to you intentionally, yes, intentionally, perfectly intentionally, no doubt in my mind, outright obvious known lie, to sell you on Darby and Schofield. That's all it is. Okay, they don't want you to know these things. They don't want you to know about Jeremiah 30:11, Jeremiah 46:28, where all the nations get destroyed. They don't want you to know this stuff. They want to confuse you and make you think Gog and Magog is coming right now, because you won't see Zechariah 12 coming. They can't do anything about it. They're weak. Satan's weak. The demons are weak. His followers are weak. Their strength is in people. That doesn't work. So, they like Satan so much, they'll get to spend eternity with him and see how they like him then. Wailing and gnashing of teeth. That's how much they'll like being with that jackass. He's a psychotic, complete lunatic, a nutbag. And they follow him. So that's the story on Gog and Magog. And you want to read Gog and Magog with Zechariah 14, Ezekiel 8-11, and the whole book of Joel. And they don't teach you that, but you should, because then you get the full perspective. Okay. So if I'm open for suggestions for the next End Times review, if there's any topics you want me to cover End Times related for my next one of these studies, you let me know, and you email me or something, and take it into advisement with the Lord and see what He says. I don't know what to do next at this point, so you let me know. I mean, I think I do know what to do next. We'll cover the next temple, I guess. We'll show you the glory of God going into the temple. We'll show you the anointed prince. We'll go through that, and we'll also talk about the 12 gates in the gate around the next temple. Each gate named after one of the tribes of Israel. That's Ezekiel 48. And we'll go through that. And we'll talk about who's supposed to go through what gate, which is rather obvious. And there is no angel guarding the gates, though. So I guess we'll do the next temple. But I'm still open for suggestions as to what to, if you want me to talk about something, let me know what it is. So, I'm Moshe. Please pray for me and my wife. Pray for our peace, safety, protection, joy, healing of our bodies. We always need that. Pray for our animals and pets, which are all rescues, that they be happy, healthy, and whole. Pray for our finances. We haven't seen much in terms of offerings for a while now. I don't know why. I think I'm doing okay with the videos, but the offerings are tapering off. I don't know. It could be the time of month. I don't know. And pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for better videos. Could always do better videos with more insights into Bible prophecy and sequencing and timing. But we're not going to know the day of the hour, but there's other things we can know. And there's things that I know that I'm not really comfortable telling you, and believe me, we're pushing forward. They don't concern you directly, that's why, but they do me, and we're going forward, believe me. And we'll have to see what happens. The Houthis are telling us they're going to attack our ports. They're going to attack Haifa. They're going to attack the Eilat airport and the Ben Gurion airport. Yet yesterday they did nothing. And we got to see what's going to happen there. Are more airplanes going to come in, or are they going to be canceling flights more? We don't know. It's a joke. Terrible. It's not a joke. It's sad, But we'll have to see what happens. And Netanyahu is probably going to do another strike on the Houthis sooner or later. It doesn't seem to do any good, And America hasn't pulled their warships out of theater yet. And they got a lot of stuff here. So I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I hope you got something out of this. And I'm out. And you might want to make sure you subscribe, because we're in, to borrow a term, critical mass. We're really there, and it could break loose any day. And I'll be doing lots of live streams when that happens, assuming the internet is still up. And you might want to subscribe, but that's entirely up to you. Giving it a thumbs up would be nice. That takes you 2 seconds, and it helps me. Do you have the 2 seconds to do it? Okay, I'm out. Thank you, guys.